Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we are going to do a side-by-side comparison and discussion of the Becker BK40 with the Rat Model 1. I have both versions of the Rat Model 1 here. This one is from a number of years ago, really before even when I was sort of just getting into knives. I guess we'll call it that. This is a more recent but still quite old version. And then finally, the brand new Becker BK40. Now, Becker has been competing in the fixed blade market with Ontario and SE for quite a long time. And so when they entered the folding knife market, for Becker is, outdoor survival style knives. So it would only make sense for them to enter the outdoor survival style marketplace with a folder. And of course, the primary target, if you're entering that particular portion of the marketplace, is going to be the Rat Model 1. And I think when you look at this and you see how it's built and even the price point, I think a number of things suggest that they were directly aiming at the Rat Model 1 customer. This is what they were trying to compete with. This is what they were trying to essentially match or even improve upon. And the question will be, how did they do? All right. So what we're going to talk about is, if you're looking to buy, to spend that $40 on a good utility outdoor cutting tool that can go above and beyond and do a little bit of outdoor stuff that can be pretty tough and reliable, which of these should you be buying? All right. So, we have two, and I'm saying two, I know I've got three knives here, but these are obviously the same. So we've got two knife models here that are, in the medium, largish range, outdoor folders, similar size, similar intent. I'm not going to get into size, weight, and carry all that much because you can go and see tons and tons of videos about that. These are, about 8.5 inches, 3.5-inch blade. So if that's the kind of knife you like, around 5 ounces, if that's the kind of knife you like, you'll probably like either one of these. And they're designed to be a little more outdoor leaning in their application. All right, so let's start off with a side-by-side discussion of the blade. We'll start off with these two, and then we'll bring the other one in as we go. So we have AUS-8 steel on both of these. And then, of course, you have the option of the D2, which is pretty common these days in the budget knife range. AUS-8 is not a terrible steel. It's certainly acceptable, and I carried this for years. This was the first sort of nicer knife that I ever got my hands on, and I carried it so long that my pants all began to wear with this particular shape right here in the bottom of my pocket. I guess it would be this shape, as it would be in the pocket this way. And so, I carried this knife, used this knife a lot, and I have never gotten rid of it. I never planned to, because this was sort of, what would you say? The modern knife. You guys all know my story about my dad and his interest in knives, and that kind of got me interested in the first place. But once I started doing research, when I wanted something better than the Gerber Paraframe that I'd been carrying that broke on me, I started watching videos. Back then it was Nut and Fancy and Cutlery Lover and a few others, but it was fairly limited. Anyway, I went with the Rat Model 1, and I've been very, very happy with it as a budget folder, and I would still comfortably recommend this knife as a good budget folder. There are some others that I would want to point you toward to consider as well, but especially if you're thinking of something to be used in the outdoors that's going to be a little bit tougher, but still committed in a budget price range, I'm probably going to lean toward the Rat Model 1 and probably in the D2. All right, and we'll talk about some of those differences as well in a couple of minutes. But for now, let's think about blade performance in terms of a side-by-side sort of discussion here. First thing to point out is the stock thickness is going to be more, okay, on the BK40 here. And when we're looking for toughness, we care about stock thickness. And so I do think that's a nice touch, in terms of grind here and keeping material and moving material out toward the tip, making this as tough as possible. The Becker has done a pretty nice job in terms of just its philosophy, its approach, how we're going to grind this knife, how we're going to make it. Absolutely well done. In terms of cutting performance, if we go side by side, let me grab a couple of pieces of cardboard here, and we'll just go ahead and slice some off. All right, so there's the flat ground Rat Model 1. There is the medium flat grind, okay, with the thicker blade stock on that BK40. They both perform acceptably well. Let's fold this in half and see if that makes a big difference. You know, you can certainly feel quite a bit more pressure. Whoops. So you aren't going to be able to feel this, but I can certainly feel a significant difference in terms of slicing between these two. However, it's not so much, as you saw, the difference is not so significant that I couldn't slice. It was just, there was a little bit less pressure needed with that thinner blade stock. And now it's just slightly thinner behind the edge. This is like 25 thousandths and this is like 22, 20. I measured a few places here. I got 22 thousandths all along. Here I got 22 to 23 all along, and here I got around 25 all along. So the edge geometry is not all that different. What makes a bigger difference is the high flat grind versus the medium flat grind and the thicker blade stock. Now, perhaps you're going to say, but I want that extra toughness, so the thicker blade stock is desirable. And you're not all that wrong. And in terms of just a side-by-side comparison on these two, I'm not going to say that the Rat Model 1 is way, way better. I will say this, however, both of them, above any of these, I would actually prefer 14C28N, and you can get that on the Real Steel H6. So I'm just going to throw that out there, okay? The Real Steel H6 are a number of versions, okay? But it's a really good option if you're looking at these two. It is a little bit heavier. I think it gets closer to 6 ounces in some of its variations compared to what these guys are doing. Okay, so back to the knives in question. I think in terms of blade performance and blade design, you get a little more slicing power with the Rat Mod 1. You get a little more toughness with the BK40. And so it all depends on exactly what you're looking for. Just to demonstrate that perhaps it doesn't matter as much, I've got a 2x4 here, and I just want to bring it in and do a little bit of whittling on it so you can see that for wood, as opposed to slicing cardboard, it's not quite the same. All right, so you can see I can carve on this pretty nicely with the BK40, and guess what? I can carve on this pretty nicely with the Rat Model 1. So, for outdoor survival type uses, they're actually pretty darn close. And of course, none of them work that great when you're trying to reach around a tripod and film and talk all at the same time. So I would wish to see, anyone out there, if you're watching and you want to make like a great outdoor survival style fixed blade that's a little more capable than, a Spyderco Tenacious or something, 14C28N would be a great option, and I would love to see that. And one of the things I'm going to do in this video is sort of come up with a conglomeration, because I think both of these knives could learn a couple things from one another. All right, so moving on now from the blade to the action, lockup and deployment. Of course, they're both liner locks. They're both thumb stud deployment. Okay, and they can both be flicked open, although the first thing I have to say is the action overall on the Rat Model 1 is quite a bit better. It's smoother, the detent is a little nicer, and there's one major thing accounting for that. Okay, I will point out, this is phosphor bronze. These are phosphor bronze with Teflon. All right, but that's not the primary thing that accounts for the difference. I'm sure it contributes. The action on the Rat is quite a bit better, but the big problem that the BK40 has is in the path of that detent ball. Okay, see the detent ball right there? Watch as I need to focus. Watch as I open the knife. Watch right here. Okay, look at that. So the detent ball has now fallen off of the blade tang. And for me to continue opening the knife, it travels down there. Look how low it gets. And then it goes over. Oh, So back here, the detent ball is on the blade, on the blade, on the blade, on the blade. There we go. Falls off the blade halfway, has to come back onto the blade, and then go over. Okay, so that is a huge miss, and that's what makes the action so poor. You can feel right here, here's where the detent ball falls off and goes back on, falls off and goes back on, falls off and goes back on. And that sucks. Okay, that was really, really poorly thought out. And because of that poorly thought out thing, I have to give this a little bit of risk to get it to deploy reliably. And even if I don't, I can feel every single time I open the knife, there's a roughness to it that is really not desirable. Okay. Now, is that the end of the world? Does it completely ruin the functionality of the knife? I don't think so. However, I would ask some questions of this, right? Over time, could that potentially, cause problems with the detent ball? I'm not 100% sure. I've had knives where the detent ball fell out, so I know that can happen. I don't know if that can contribute to it or not, but I do know for sure that it messes with the action. So that's a bit of a miss, and it seems like a really easy miss that they could have, even when they were drawing this in CAD, they should have really easily picked up on, hey, here's the path of the detent ball, and it comes off the tang of the blade and goes back on. We need to address that. Seems pretty obvious. Now, the other thing I'll point out here is that the stop pin on the BK40 is internal. So it's traveling in those smile-shaped grooves you've seen on lots of knives. Let's see if I can get an angle where you can see it. Probably not. Yeah, you can sort of see it right there. You can see the inside of the track that the stop pin moves in right there. Here, obviously, we're just dealing with a single stop pin at the back. All right. Which, by the way, is a fairly substantial stop pin, and that is something I definitely appreciate. So we've talked a little bit about the action. In terms of accessibility and all that stuff, the lock bar is quite accessible on the BK40. The thumb studs are comfortable, okay, but overall the Rat has a noticeably better action, which, is not the end of the world, but if you're trying to get your knife out in a hurry, this is definitely an improvement over this. All right. Not only do I have to push harder, but I have to give a little bit of wrist action in order to get it to be reliable. Let's move on now to the handle, where perhaps we could have a bigger discussion. So we've got FRN here, and then of course this is the carbon fiber, sticker on G10. Not my favorite option. I would have been just as happy with just a straight G10 here, but there it is. I will say this is a little bit thicker than this, which does make a difference when it comes to comfort. All right. Construction, we've got stainless steel liner locks everywhere. Here we have the FRN backspacer. Here we have, of course, standoffs, so fully open versus partially open. We've got the internal stop pin versus well, it's not an external stop pin per se, but the stop pin is just located here. This one is part of the blade. All right. Either way, not a huge deal in either case. Similar thickness on the stainless steel liners, but the Rat seems to be just a little bit thicker. All right, we've got a wire clip, which I love. The wire clip is a really, really nice option here. Here we've just got a spring clip, which is pretty common on tons and tons of folding knives. Okay, so those construction choices, am I hugely in favor of one over the other? Well, certainly I like the G10 a lot more than either one of these. It's also a little bit thicker than this, which does add a level of comfort. Now, if you grip all of these in hand, all right, you can really notice that the Becker is more comfortable. It really is. Now, while it's more comfortable, there are a couple of other things that need to be addressed, primarily this. there is quite a bit of flex there, and it becomes really disheartening. So when you're cutting stuff, you can actually feel the blade flexing in your hand, or the handle flexing in your hand, and that is really, really off-putting. Okay, so and here's what I had said about these handles is they have something to learn from each other. I love the implementation of a 3D contoured handle. It is very, very comfortable. However, it needed to be done in G10 or a good, strong, good quality micarta. Here with the G10 and the stainless steel, guess what? I don't get that flex at all. Even here with the FRN, I get a little bit of the flex, but not nearly to the same degree, like not even close. Okay. So the Becker is more comfortable without a doubt, and I like the wire clip. If someone from Ontario is watching this, you would really, really do well to create a blade, to create a handle that had this 3D contouring. It is phenomenal. It's really, really comfortable. And for a knife that you're going to be doing some work with outdoors, that would be a huge improvement over the plain flat scales. And there are knives that are doing this. A good example would be the CJRB Feldspar. It's got 3D contoured micarta. It feels amazing in hand. And if I was gonna, you could easily add that as a competitor as well. All right, so that's the handle comparison. The other thing that is really, really nice about the Rat 1 is the way they've got this ramp finger choil combination. Really, really locks you in. And this nice big flat area that isn't necessarily designed for this, but does allow you to get up here and do some finer detailed work. And I like that. The BK40, it still feels pretty secure in hand, but not to the same degree that the Rat 1 does. All right, so overall, if you're looking to buy one of these knives, I still think the Rat Model 1 is probably your better option. I would importantly, though, add two other knives to consideration. One would be the CJRB Feldspar. The other would be the Real Steel H6. And there are a few different variants of the H6 that are available. Obviously, you'd want to go with the one with 14C28 in steel. I believe there's one with a hollow grind, which I do prefer significantly over a flat grind. And anyway, there are lots of good options. They're all G10, and I believe there's probably a 3D contoured version of the H6 as well. So there you go, guys. That's my discussion of the Becker BK40 versus the Rat Model 1. The Becker does do some things different than a lot of folding knives, and it's a welcome influence, I guess, in the budget market. However, it needed to just execute a little bit better. The detent path and the overall action is a significant fail, as is the feel in hand when doing hard work. When this whole blade, when this whole handle starts to flex, it's really disheartening. So that's the main conclusion that I would draw here, or the main issues that I would point to here. Otherwise, it's not a bad knife, and I'm not arguing that it's a bad knife at all. But for years and years and years, we've thought of the Rat Model 1 as a really, really good budget knife. And that's where the BK40 falls short. I can't go as far as to say, yeah, this is a great budget option. This is an excellent budget option, which I can say with a little more confidence about the Rat Model 1. And again, I would also be looking at some of those other options that I've mentioned and we've covered before on the channel in years past. I guess I should get an H6 and add it back to the collection because it does work as a really, really good alternative to any of these. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out those channel sponsors down below. We will talk to you soon.